Welcome back, guys, to the Great Ace Attorney Adventures, where last episode we boarded the train once again to correct Herlock's great deduction, figuring out that Nicolina's pet was actually a cat that had entered Kazuma's room last night, and a cat toy meant to coax Darka back was the scene's speckled band, and that Kazuma may have fallen over said cat, causing his death according to Miss Pavlova's testimony. The snake being a red herring of sorts, belonging all along to Biff Stroganoff. With Sholmes feeling dejected about the snake's starring role, we wonder if there isn't more to all of this. Miss Pavlova. I understand the difficult situation you found yourself in, and I do sympathize. But please remember this. A young man lost his life. If you're going to attempt to cover up your guilt with lies, then no matter what the circumstances, I cannot forgive you. But what are you talking about, Miss Mikotoba? What lies? Miss Pavlova just confessed everything. It was just a series of unfortunate events, an accident. I'm no great detective like Mr. Sholmes. I don't have a gift for knowing the truth. But even I can see that was not the truth. Don't you agree, Mr. Naruhodo? To be perfectly honest, yes. There's a discrepancy in Miss Pavlova's story, I'm sure of it. I just can't quite put my finger on it. I confess, I was intending to let Scotland Yard deal with any outstanding issues on this matter. Oh. I'm only present here for a very specific reason. The truth is that you, Mr. Naruhodo, are simply a distraction. A distraction? I do hope you've not been finding your shackles too uncomfortable. Ah, not again! When did he do that? Especially as they're on your wrist as a result of my intervention. I was rather hoping I could resolve matters before we made our next port call. You were, Mr. Sholmes? Yes, but I overlooked one important detail. The deceased young man was a very close companion of yours. Was he not? Yes. Kazuma was my closest friend. I owed him my freedom, even. In that case, we must follow this to its conclusion. No further distractions. You must uncover the real truth here, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, whatever that may be. The key to this is the discrepancy in Miss Pavlova's story. I'm sure. If I can chase that down, maybe the truth will become clear. The truth about how you really died. About how that scene in your cabin really came to be. Alright, I'll see what I can do. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Naruhodo. So then, shall we begin? Yes. What we should ponder first is the victim who lost his life in a cabin that was bolted shut from the inside. Was this truly an unfortunate accident? Or was it in fact no accident at all? That is what we must establish in the first instance. But we've already established it, haven't we? The man tripped over the kitten that had climbed into his cabin via the ventilator. Tragic, yes, but still an accident. Hold it! Wait, let's just take a step back. It doesn't make sense if that's really what happened, does it? I'm gonna have to ask you to spell it out for me, I'm afraid. Yes, it's starting to take shape now. There's a clear contradiction between the facts and Miss Pavlova's story here. The evidence is right there in Kazuma's cabin. It's undeniable. his death couldn't possibly have been a mere accident. Really? Let us show our hand, Mr. Naruhodo. Time to present the evidence. Ah, they've shown up. The evidence that proves unequivocally that the victim's death was no mere accident. I mean, there was time. It's a blooming message. The Russian word for wardrobe in purple ink. Hello. We've never used this the entire time. Have we not? There's something else going on. Why would he write that? Why would he have the time? Why would he do it in Russian? There's like many questions here. You wouldn't you write kitten, maybe? After all, I think he'd get out of the wardrobe in time. He wasn't locked in said wardrobe. It was just a paper seal. Yes! The truth is clearly recorded in this photographic print. There's no way that Mr. Asugi could have left this message on the floor. That's script. It's Russian, isn't it? Indeed it is. The word written means wardrobe. I see what you mean. Most people would leave a dying message in their native language, Japanese in this case. But maybe he was studying Russian. It is a simple language. He could have picked it up very fast. That doesn't seem likely. That's actually not the point. It makes no difference whether he knew Russian or not. Sorry, what do you mean? Exactly what I said before. There is no way that Mr. Asugi could have left this message on the floor. And the reason why is clearly explained in here. He'd have died instantly. Damage to the cervical vertebrae resulting in instant death. Instant death. Ah! Which means after the victim fell to the floor, he couldn't possibly have written anything. Because he was already dead. That's not the only reason either. There's something else we found in Mr. Asugi's cabin. A remnant of something that couldn't possibly have been there if what Miss Pavlova told us was true. What? So Zado-san has noticed it too then? Putting this message on the floor aside, there's something else that gives the truth away. The message on the floor aside. Another piece of evidence that proves this was no accident. In other words... Okay, so it's evidence I'm presenting, not in that picture. So it's evidence on the scene. So we can discount, like, the articles. Technically, Kazuma's diary as well, I guess. The post-mortem report. So on the scene, the only other thing on the scene here is the mark on the floor itself. The scuff mark made by Kazuma's shoes were found by the victim's body. But if he scuffs that way, of course, it would mean the top of the shoe, not the bottom of the shoe. Which sounds like he was dragged. I'd say it's probably that. Hey, we got 5 penalties. Yes! This piece of broken glass next to the mark on the floor. Oh, the glass. That's the glass bell the kitten had around his neck. We already know all about that. If it's broken, why is one half in there and one half in there? It was broken in half when the victim tripped over the cat and fell. So we already have a satisfactory explanation. What's the flaw in that logic? Unfortunately, there is a very big flaw. A fatal flaw. What? That's really what happened. Then how did one half of the bell end up back here in this cabin? Ah. Yes. Remember that we found the other half of the glass bell in that waste paper basket? Would you care to explain that, Miss Pavlova? Oh, no. Both those pieces of evidence clearly point to the same conclusion. And when Mr. Asugi died last night in his cabin, there was someone else in the room. And that same person deliberately arranged the scene to disguise the truth in order to cover up his or her own guilt. Yeah! So yeah, deliberately arranging the scene, deliberately arranging the body. So my scuff mark proves true, even if it's not the right answer. I always get there with the wrong working. Yes, there was someone else present in Mr. Asugi's... Whoa, you're wasting time. Someone else was there? Duh, of course, we know this. What are you talking about? Bulkhead was bolted shut from inside. There was no way in or out. Oh, yes. And the only other person in the cabin when young student died was you.
Yes!
It's true, I was in the cabin when it happened. You were shut inside the cabin wardrobe, to be precise about the details. But I don't know Russian. There's no way I would have left that message. Not would have. There's no way you could have left that message, to be precise about the details. Would you mind? Forgive me, my dear fellow. As I was saying, the person in question wrote the word wardrobe in Russian on the floor in an attempt to incriminate me for the crime, even though I had been asleep in there the entire time. And then, the same person picked up the broken glass bell that had fallen to the floor. A fear of it becoming evidence that would show how Mr. Asogi really died. But why wouldn't this person have taken all the pieces of the bell away? Leaving half behind was always going to raise questions. Yes, well, it was past 1 o'clock in the early hours of the morning. The cabin would have been quite dark. A single small lamp suspended from the ceiling would barely have cast any light onto the floor there. Little wonder then that the culprit failed to notice a fragment of the tiny item. You all suspect me, don't you?
Hold it!
Seaman Stroganoff! Nina is woman of sea. She is daughter of strong sailor. 2 years ago, they noticed her dancing skills and she went away to join ballet company. But before, she was dancer on the ship, a member of ship's band. You do not accuse ship's angel of being criminal. Ah, so that's it. You say that when young student died, Nina was there in his cabin. But that is not possible. I give my tooth. Well, this is almost interesting. And why would you give your tooth, pray? How can you be so sure? You are a great detective. You should know. Look truth in eyes. Cabin bulkhead was bolted shut from inside. Nobody could go into cabin. Not Nina, not anyone. Or you want to tell me that killer can walk through locked doors? Niet. It's impossible. Ah, he's right. But wait, I've read about this in detective stories. People often tie thread around door latches so they can open and close them from the outside. Fred, are you stupid? These bulkheads are not barn doors. Certainly not. These are watertight doors as one would expect to find on any modern steamship. Constructed of heavy steel with not a gap in sight. No threads or needles or magnets could have been used. No, of course not. I thought so too. But Mr. Naruhodo suggested it earlier, so... Zano-san, how could you shift it onto me like that? How? So Seaman Stroganoff has a valid point. The cabin door couldn't have been bolted shut from the outside. Not necessarily. What? I put it to you that I could bolt this cabin door without laying a finger on it. And in this very cabin, we can see the traces of the method I have in mind having been used before. I don't believe it! Well, Mr. Naruhodo, I believe you know what I mean, don't you? A way to shut the bolt of the cabin door from the outside. One way does spring to mind, yes. Do you really know what Mr. Sholmes means, Mr. Naruhodo? Yes, and so should you. Because we've seen it happen. Indeed we have. So would you care to do the honors, Mr. Naruhodo? Point out the telling signs of the method that was used to slide the cabin door bolt across from the outside. Bang!
Yes!
Look at the bookcase there. See how all the books and things on it are toppled over? That must have happened when the ship made its emergency stop before. Yes, that's right. It's a very powerful vessel after all. When the engines are thrown into reverse, a violent jolt goes across the entire ship. Any small objects that aren't fastened down are bound to fall over. I believe, yes, it's what's known as the force of inertia, acting on the objects. Is there nothing Susato-san doesn't know? Or that isn't in a book, at least? Well, whatever it's called, the same force that pushed over those books on the bookcase is also made something else in this cabin move. Yes, it did. Though I do wonder how well oiled it is. The bolt on the cabin door. Ah! It was very obvious just after the emergency stop that the ship made earlier. We had come into this cabin not long before and we hadn't bolted the door. But then... Hello, is anybody in there? Shout if you need assistance. Oh, that sounds like... Inspector Osanaga. Oh, yes! That's it! When the ship stopped suddenly, the bolt flew across and locked the door. Yes, it's made of metal, but it's small and light enough to be moved by the ship's sudden change of speed. Or the force of inertia, if you want to call it that. Are you trying to say that last night, after Mr. Asogi was killed? The SS Burlia made another emergency stop? When I woke up this morning and looked around the cabin, I thought it looked a little odd. All the books on the shelves had toppled over, and all the ornaments. It was almost as if someone had run their hand across the shelves and deliberately knocked everything over. Oh yes, I remember that. And I stood them all up again, didn't I? Then when we came into this cabin, we were surprised to see the same thing in here. All the books and everything had toppled over, just like in Mr. Asogi's cabin. Oh my! Do you have anything to say about this, Miss Pavlova? Are you out of your mind? You say Burlia made emergency stop. It does seem a little far-fetched. How could that possibly have happened? Unless you're saying that the culprit is actually someone from the engine room. Oh, it is simple enough. Are you forgetting the button in the passageway outside? Used to trigger the emergency alarm. Oh, yes, of course. There was a notice, wasn't there? Telling you only to press the button in times of emergency? On dark nights when the fog is dense, the captain cannot afford to rely on the eyes of his lookout alone. Hence the placement of a number of buttons around the vessel to allow any crewman to raise the alarm. A sort of button one is almost compelled to press to satisfy one's curiosity. Wait, it was you! When the button is pressed, two things happen in the interests of safety. The emergency alarm bell rings and the vessel comes to a complete stop. As indeed it did a little earlier today. Mr. Sholmes, surely it wasn't you who... As I always say, a button has but one purpose in life. To be pressed, whatever the occasion. He sounds almost proud of himself. How dare you mess with ship? I report you to captain. You are in much trouble now. Now, I'm sure that can wait until later. Let us not overlook the fact that we have now learnt a valuable lesson. When the vessel makes an emergency stop, the bolts on the cabin doors slide closed. So, what we must now consider... Yes, it all comes down to one thing now. Last night, after what happened to Mr. Asogi. Did this ship make an emergency stop, or did it not? You are idiots! Burlia is a cruise ship with many passengers. If we make emergency stop, even in the middle of night, there will be chaos everywhere. What are your thoughts, Mr. Naruhodo? Well, it's certainly possible that some kind of emergency happened last night. We have evidence to support that idea. Really? What evidence, Mr. Naruhodo? Fascinating. Do show us, my good man. What evidence promotes the theory that some emergency gripped this vessel last night? Okay. Regarding the ship. And not you pressing a button? There were no entries from 2 on even though the guy liked to click nothing to report. Click? Right, nothing to report. Virtually no entries from 2 a.m. until early this morning. I'd say it's probably that. Yes! That's why it's not on the record. Seaman Stroganov, it's your duty to patrol the first-class area of the ship, isn't that right? That is correct. Why? And the ship's log here. This would be where you record the details of your duties. What are you doing with that? That is mine! You rather carelessly left it atop the little makeshift bureau in the passageway out there. But as responsible passengers, we took it into our care of a mind to return it to you later. I left it there on purpose. That is where I put it always. The point is, looking at what you usually record, it's clear that under normal circumstances, you write the phrase nothing to report every 30 minutes. But from 2 o'clock last night until first light this morning, nothing was recorded at all. Nothing recorded in the log. That is... because nothing happened. But if nothing happened, you would normally write nothing to report, wouldn't you? Indeed so, which tells us that shortly after 2 a.m., something happened. Here aboard the SS Berlia. Something sufficiently significant to make you forget to fill in the ship's log, in fact. Are you suggesting that the ship really did make an emergency stop in the middle of the night? Stop talking rubbish! If I'm perfectly honest, I find that a little hard to believe myself. Oh, why? Well, because if something as major as an emergency stop really had happened, surely all of us would have been noticed. That's very true. Thanks to the emergency stop we experienced earlier, we all know what it feels like now. The ship lurched so violently, and the alarm bell was so loud, I can't imagine that anybody would sleep through that, even if it happened in the dead of night. Well, no, that's a good point. What of the throbbing? Sorry, what do you mean? Your head, man. The throbbing of your head since this morning. We have all suffered with it. Oh, yes. I've had a headache, you're right. In fact, I haven't been feeling myself since I woke up today. Nor have I. My head has been feeling heavy ever since dawn. Yes, you've all been afflicted, haven't you? Just as I suspected. He's right, my head's been throbbing today too. And since eating dinner yesterday evening, everything has felt sort of hazy. I can't really remember anything that happened after I climbed back inside the wardrobe. Then the first thing I noticed this morning was the throbbing pain in my head. I had already been dragged out of the wardrobe and had those handcuffs put on me by that point. Why didn't I wake up when all that was happening to me? Tell me, Mr. Naruhodo, you boarded this vessel as a stowaway, didn't you? Oh, well, yes, sorry. The stowaway class of accommodation doesn't usually include meals. What did you survive on? Well, Kazuma looked after me. He was always happy to share his meals. So you enjoyed some of the whole roast chicken dish that was served yesterday evening, I take it? Yes, in fact. I had all of that. Kazuma wasn't fond of chicken. Oh, really? So the victim didn't eat any of the chicken at all? That's right, he didn't touch it. Is that relevant? My dear fellow, does that not strike you? Oh, Mr. Sholmes, do you mean to say that there was something wrong with the chicken? I do. No, really? Is that really true? The meal prepared for the passengers last night had been tampered with. Tampered with by the addition of a soporific, designed to induce a very deep slumber in those who consumed it. A sleeping drug? Do you mean whoever did this laced every meal with a sleeping drug so no one would notice the ship's emergency stop? Mr. Naruhodo, of course there's no one Mr. Sholmes means. What a far-fetched idea. Precisely. Lacing every meal of every passenger on board with a soporific drug would certainly be impossible. Unless, that is, every single member of the crew was a conspirator. What? Mr. Sholmes? Well, Seaman? I'm sorry to say that any more deception in this matter will get you nowhere. If you refuse to talk, there would have to be an inquiry made through the shipping company, of course. And were that to happen, every member of the crew, and the captain himself, would be hauled over the coals. For aiding and abetting a renegade. Please, no more. I will tell everything. I cannot make problems like this for everyone anymore. These crewmen are your former comrades, I believe. Yes, so when I decided to run away, I asked them to help me. We all agreed to help, everyone together. She threw away everything, her fame in the ballet, Mother Russia. We wanted to help our angel. I don't believe it. You are right. We put sleeping drug in chicken last night. Yes, I remember now. I did notice chewing on a lump of something strange and bitter at one point. We could not make all drug. How do you say dissolve? Talk about heavy seasoning. At midnight in waters near Shanghai, we brought our angel on board. She was helped by comrade on shore with small fishing boat. While all the passengers of the SS Burlia slept soundly, thanks to the almost medical effect of the slumber-inducing potion their evening meals had contained. So, if that's what happened, the only people awake on the ship last night were the crew, people who disliked chicken, and the newly boarded passenger, Miss Pavlova. And that means it would have been possible for you. You could have used the emergency stop trick to lock Kazuma's cabin door. But how does that make sense? Surely every cabin door would have ended up locked in that case, and there would have been complete chaos. Oh, I wouldn't say so. What? Of course. Just like us, all the other passengers would have eaten their evening meal of chicken in their cabins, after which they would have been overwhelmed by tiredness because of the sleeping drug. Quite. And accordingly, all passengers were already in their cabins for the night. Yes! The overwhelming majority of passengers would habitually sleep with their cabin doors bolted anyway, and so not one of them would have found it remarkable to find a door locked in the morning. In summary, in order to fasten the bolt of a single cabin door on the ship, the culprit brought the entire vessel to an emergency stop in the early hours of the morning. You have talked long time and said many things. What is point? The point is what I said earlier. There was somebody else present on the scene when the victim lost his life last night. Someone who left a message in Russian on the floor in an attempt to incriminate another. Someone who tried desperately to hide the broken fragments of glass that would reveal the culprit's identity. And someone who abused the ship's emergency stop procedure in order to lock a door. All told, a busy night. But... I don't know about any of this. I am just a little girl. You like to speak with your long English words and explain your clever ideas. But I am sailor, and sailors don't listen to long, boring stories. We don't believe. Sailors like me, we trust only what we see with our eyes. A laudable trait. What? I am quite of the same disposition, my good man. Observation to me is everything. Mr. Naruhodo, Oh, yes? Do you hear it? That accusatory cry of guilt on the wind. What accusatory cry of guilt? Sorry, you've lost me. Proof of involvement, man. But you can't hear such a call with your ears. No, you must hear it with your eyes, for observation is the basis of all deduction. What are you talking about? I believe the time has come for one final logic and reasoning spectacular to expose the truth. Well, this seems like a beautiful time to end an episode on a cliffhanger, not knowing how much is left, but with one more final logic and reasoning spectacular, another dance for us to do coming up. Let's maybe end this case with the truth revealed next time on the Great Ace Attorney Adventures. I'll see you guys then for more. Bye-bye.